Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll continue our discussion from yesterday's class. Because today I'm taking from the office. I don't have all the files here. Let me just download the slides. Downloaded. This computer is very slow. What is this? Let us open here only. It's too slow. So good evening again. So let us start. Can you hear me and see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sir.
good. So we had started discussing about the components. We will go through the main components briefly, starting from the centrifugal compressor and axial compressor. So compressors, then a very quick discussion on the combustion chamber, just like what are the different aspects of combustion chamber, without going into calculations, which is beyond the scope of this course. And then we will go into a brief discussion about turbines, turbine bladings, and things like that. Okay. So accordingly, I will keep on giving some problems, 3-4 problems from each of the section from compressors and turbines uh, for you to solve and discuss the theory in the class. Okay. So we have started discussion about compressors, and we noted that there are mainly two types of compressors. The centrifugal compressor, where the flow comes in axially and it goes out radially. So it comes along the axis and goes out in the direction of the, means in the radial direction. And the other type is the axial compressor, where the flow comes in axially and also goes out axially, like a fan, like a normal fan that we use in our home. Okay. And so I will just open the notes in that case. Okay. Whatever we have discussed yesterday, like brief theoretical discussion about compressors, I have it in the notes also. So just go through it. So types of compressors, centrifugal and axial flow compressors. Can we go to the read mode? So centrifugal and axial flow compressors, and the centrifugal compressors, in the centrifugal compressors, the flow comes in axially and goes out radially. And you can see the slides to check that. The main advantage is that you get higher pressure ratio in a single stage as compared to axial flow compressor. However, there are drawbacks. The main drawback is that the cross-sectional area is large as compared to the flow rate. For the same flow rate, the centrifugal compressor will have larger cross-sectional area as compared to axial flow compressors. Okay, because you need a movement in the radial direction, in the direction of the radius. for the compression to occur. As a result, the area actually increases. And it is also difficult to use multiple centrifugal compressor stages because of the direction of the exit of the flow. Okay, so if you see the slides again, the flow goes out from the centrifugal compressor in the radial direction. So if you have another centrifugal compressor after it, you have to twist the flow and again bring it back in the axial direction. So it needs a lot of engineering, it leads to a lot of engineering difficulties. So as a result, these are not very conducive for multi-staging. Okay. On the other hand, for axial flow compressors, because the flow comes in axially and goes out axially, you can just have one after another and in a series pattern, and there won't be much difficulty in that case for multi-staging. Okay. So on the other hand, for axial compressor, we already have noted that flow comes in and goes out axially. And the drawback is that you will get lower pressure ratio per stage, okay, because the flow acts, the blades act on the flow for a less distance. You get lower pressure ratio. If you want to have higher pressure ratio, there will be separation of flow. However, there are advantages. The main advantage is that the cross-sectional area is low, and they are also suitable for multi-staging. And in modern aircraft engines, you need 10 to 12 stages minimum to reach a very high pressure ratio of 20 to 30. So for modern jet engines, we generally see axial flow compressors instead of centrifugal compressors. Okay. So we'll go into further details of centrifugal compressors in today's class and for axial flow compressors in the next class. So the main components of centrifugal compressors are the inlet, the impeller, diffuser, and casing. Again, let us go back to the slides. I don't know whether it got downloaded or not. It is easier. Oh, this has got downloaded without any notification. क्लास चल रहा है ओके कल दूंगा ठीक है ओके थैंक यू So I will keep this open because we will keep on referring to this slide. Okay, because this is very essential for us to understand. In the previous class also we have gone through it. It is very essential for us to understand what is the flow pattern in the centrifugal compressor. Otherwise, we will not be able to solve any problems. Okay. So if you look at it, I hope you can look at the schematic diagram of the centrifugal compressor. Can somebody still confirm?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, this is from the book of the Cohen-Rogers book. Okay, so if you want to read more details, you can go through that book. So the flow comes in axially. So here the axial direction cannot be shown. Okay, so the axial direction is out of the plane of your screen. So the flow is coming from the direction from where you are sitting towards the screen. Okay, and comes within this passage. So you can see that this impeller I, this notation is given. So starting from this bottom radius to the top radius, this annular region, through this region the flow comes. This is the cross section of the impeller I. Okay, and it comes from your direction towards the screen, and with a certain velocity. Assume that it comes at a straight line, means along the axial direction. There are two pipes, two cylinders. One is along this line and one is along the outer line. So between these two pipes, there is the annular region through which the flow comes, and this is known as the impeller I. And the impeller is the rotating part of the centrifugal compressor. Okay, so it rotates. In this case, it is shown as if rotating from the left to the right side, means in the clockwise direction. Okay, and once the flow comes, it is gradually taken from the axial directions towards the radial direction. Radial direction is in the plane of the, so it is in the plane of the screen. Okay, so you have the flow coming like this, and I hope you can see me also. It goes out like this. Okay, in the radial direction, and it goes out with a certain velocity, and typically it goes out straight along the radial direction, means directly along the radial direction without any angle. Okay, so relative to the impeller, but because the impeller is rotating, the actual absolute velocity is in an angular direction like this. Okay, it is in an angular direction like this. So the absolute velocity goes out towards the right hand side. So after the impeller, you have a small space which is known as the vaneless space, and then you have the diffuser through which the flow velocity is reduced and the static pressure is increased. Okay. So I will just repeat again. So there is the intake section, then there is the rotating impeller section. There is a diffuser, and at the end of the diffuser, all the flow is collected in a casing or volute, or they can be directly passed into the combustion chamber, separate combustion chamber. From each of the diffuser, the flow can be passed into separate combustion chamber. Okay. So this is the design. Okay. So we have to look at the velocity triangle with respect to the design. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand. Okay. So if you look at the outlet velocity triangle, I will come to the notes again. But if you look at the outlet velocity triangle, the blade is moving in this direction at the outlet. Okay, it is moving in this direction, and your flow is in the. Forget this case. You just consider the top case. Okay, the flow is in the radial direction, like this. Okay, the flow is in the radial direction. So the absolute velocity. So the flow is relative to the impeller. So the absolute velocity of flow is given by the C2. Okay, is in this direction. So the diffuser should be somewhat along this direction. There is some slight change in angle in the vaneless space, but it should be in this direction. Okay. So now the purpose of the impeller is to accelerate the flow to a high velocity, but because this cross-sectional area between the vanes also increases, you can see that the cross-sectional area here is less as compared to here. Okay, so the space between the vanes will increase. So there is some increase in the static pressure also. Okay, so it both acts like a diffuser as well as it increases the velocity. Both of the things occur simultaneously. It increases the velocity as well as increases the static pressure. On the other hand, the diffuser only increases the static pressure, but at the cost of the velocity. Okay, because there is no separate work input to the diffuser, no rotating part. So at the cost of the velocity, kinetic energy, it increases the static pressure. Here both the kinetic energy as well as the static pressure increases. So ultimately what happens, there is a huge rise in the stagnation pressure, and that occurs because of rise in the stagnation enthalpy, which happens because you are supplying work to the impeller, but you are not supplying work to the diffuser. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Now with reference to this, we will go back to the notes and draw the velocity diagrams again. Okay. So just to summarize, the impeller is the rotating part which increases the flow velocity and stagnation pressure based on work input. Diffuser is the static part which reduces the kinetic energy and increases the static pressure. Okay, ideal diffuser will not change the stagnation pressure in real life because of frictional losses. There will be slight reduction in the stagnation pressure. And other two parts are the intake, okay, which corresponds to the inlet impeller eye, and after the diffuser there may be a casing or volute. That is not mandatory. So again we will draw this velocity diagram with reference to the impeller design. Okay, I hope this is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where is the zoom button here? Is it not visible? I will just scroll it. So I am showing here a lot of parameters, designations which are typically used. So this is the impeller eye between these two deep blue lines here, okay, or purple lines here. This is the impeller eye. Okay, so the starting point of the impeller eye is called as the hub or the root. Okay, so we are designating this radius of the hub as R1H, and the ending point we are designating by R1T. Okay, impeller eye tip. So this is impeller eye root and impeller eye tip. So R1 is because it is the intake point 1, and because it has different radiuses going from hub to tip, we are designating it with R1H and R1T. Somewhere along it, in between, at the midpoint, we will also have the mean radius of the eye, which we will call as R1M. Okay, mean eye radius. So this is the inlet section and is denoted by the condition 1. Okay, the outlet section is given by the condition 2, and the radius is given as R2. Okay, so the velocity at the end, the velocity relative to the impeller is CR2. Okay, or actually it is V2. Relative velocities we will denote by the symbol V. So at this point the relative velocity is V2, and the velocity of the blade is U2. Okay, so if there is no losses, or no, if the case is ideal, the absolute velocity will be the vector summation of U2 plus this V2. Okay, so C2 will be vector summation of U2 plus V2. So along this direction with some angle. Okay, it goes out along this direction. But in real life, what happens is that there is some slip that happens because there is some space between the blades. Okay, so the blades cannot impart the velocity exactly equal to the blade velocity. Although the blade velocity is U2 in this direction, the fluid does not get up to the blade velocity. It is slightly less than the blade velocity. Okay, so this is denoted by a factor called a slip factor, which is less than 1. Okay, it may be about 0.9, around 0.9. So the velocity that the fluid gets in this direction, in the wheel direction is known as the rotating direction. Okay, in the direction at which the rotation is happening. So along the wheel direction, the velocity is CW2, which is slightly less than U2 blade velocity given by the factor sigma. So CW2 is equal to sigma into U2. Okay, where sigma is the slip factor. I will come to how the slip factor is defined, but this is the case. So the wheel component of the velocity is CW2. The radial component is V2, which is also equal to the CR2, means the radial component of velocity. And as a result, the absolute velocity is C2. Okay. So this is for the outlet section. What about the inlet?
R2 and omega 2 are subscripts, no, sir?
R2 and sorry, could not hear. Can you
CW2 and CR2, this W2 and R2 are subscript.
Correct. C is the, so we are going to use C for denoting the absolute velocities. We are going to denote the relative velocities by using V, and we are going to denote blade velocities by using U. Okay. Now 1, 2, this denotes the intake. So 1 is the intake and 2 is the outlet. Okay. And R and W, this denotes the radial component and the wheel component. Okay. Wheel means along the rotational direction, radial means along the radius direction. Okay, radial direction. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Because this is very important to understand. Otherwise, you want to. Problems are very simple once you understand the diagram. Okay. So this part is easy to understand. Students sometimes get confused about the inlet part, inlet velocity diagram. Okay, because the inlet velocity diagram is not in the plane of your screen. So you have to imagine that this inlet. In the class, it is easier to show. Here it is difficult to show. The velocity coming is C1 towards the screen. Okay, so if you can see me, I don't know whether you can. I have switched on the video, that's why. Okay, so I hope you can see this pen. Okay, let me just check whether it is visible on the video or not. If you can increase, I don't think it is visible clearly to you. Okay, so I will just refer to the slides itself. Okay, so you have to imagine that this is now the axial direction. Okay, so this is the axial plane. Okay, and the radial plane now you cannot see. Okay, this is the axial plane. So we have rotated the plane, and the flow is coming along the axial direction with velocity C1. Okay, C, remember, is the absolute velocity. So the flow is coming along the axial direction with velocity C1. At this point, the blade is still rotating, so it is moving with velocity U1. Okay, in the right hand direction. Okay, in the wheel direction. So you can see here the axial and wheel direction. In this case, you are able to see the axial and, sorry, the wheel and radial direction. You cannot see the axial direction. Here you can see the wheel length, axial direction, you cannot see the radial direction. Okay, so this is the axial direction of the flow, and this is the blade velocity. So relative to the blade, the flow enters at a velocity of v1 at an angle alpha 1. Okay, so this is the flow relative to the blade at the inlet. Okay, so if you go back to the diagram, then you will see that the blades are twisted. Okay, these are twisted because the flow has to enter at this angle alpha. So like this, the flow has to enter at the angle alpha. So as to enter smoothly, the blades also have to be at an angle alpha at the inlet. Okay, so blades also have to be at an angle alpha at the inlet. So relative to the blade, the blades see that as if the flow is coming at an angle alpha, but from absolute viewpoint, if we are standing outside, you will see that the flow direction is just axial, like just going towards the plane of the impeller. Okay, from the outside, like flowing through a pipe and going towards it. Okay. Is this clear to everyone, the inlet velocity triangle? Or any confusion is there? This is very important.
Sir,
So the
explain it again, sir.
Okay, I will explain it again. Okay.
so sir, the blade will see that the air is coming at the direction of V1, which is the relative, no?
Yes, it comes at the direction of V1.
And
Okay.
actually it is coming in direction C1 and the blade
Actually, it's
velocity is
coming in direction C1. So with respect to this figure, left hand side figure, what is the direction of C1? Can you explain to your fellow classmates? What is the direction of C1?
Inside that plane of paper.
Which direction? Plane of paper means which direction? From where to where the C1 is going?
Sir, from our eye to the paper.
Yes, it's not in the plane of paper. It is perpendicular to the plane of paper. But your answer is correct. It is going toward from your eye to the paper. Okay. This is the direction of C1. What is the direction of U1? At this point, say what is the direction of U1?
parallel to plane of paper.
Tangential to
Along this, like
left to
similar
right?
to U2.
Along this plane of paper.
It is
yes.
similar to U2 but shorter in length because the rotational speed is fixed but radius is less, right? So along this direction, tangential plane or wheel plane. And what is the direction of V2? V1? V1?
Sir, in the plane of paper at an angular direction.
Not plane of paper. Plane of paper, why you are saying? C1 also are not in the plane of paper, right? It is from your eye towards the paper. Plane of
Sir,
paper.
the
Yes,
plane
sir.
in which we are seeing to the
the
paper.
plane perpendicular
Actually.
to screen.
Plane of
It
C1.
is
Plane of
at an
C1.
angle
in the
to
plane
the
of
screen.
C1.
So it is from our eye towards the screen, but at an angle. Okay, like this. So it is going like this. I hope you can see my hand. It is going like this. Okay, absolute velocity is like this, but this relative velocity is going like this. So not in the plane of the paper. Okay, so you have to rotate this right hand diagram. You have to rotate, keeping the U1 constant. So if this is the diagram, okay, if this is the diagram, I hope you can see it. So this phone is the diagram. Okay. Can you see the phone? I have had holding in my.
Your camera is off.
Is it off?
Yes.
Should it be off?
No, sir, I can see. No,
No,
sir,
it
no,
is
sir.
on.
sir.
Camera is on.
I can see, sir.
That is my picture.
Sir.
That case. Okay. This is the plane on the right hand side. You rotate it like this. Rotate the camera like this, mobile like this. Okay. Then it comes to the left hand side picture. So now the C1 is in this direction and U1 is in this direction and V1 is in this direction. Okay. C1 is in this direction, U1 is in this direction and V1 is in this direction. You have to rotate this right hand diagram by 90 degree, keeping U1 same. So C1 and V1 will come out of the plane. That you have to imagine. Okay. How it is happening. So in the class it is easy to show. Here it is difficult to show. I cannot show it properly. But you have to imagine the 3D perspective. Is it clear to everyone?
Basically,
Yes,
sir, C1 is absolute velocity of incoming air, no, sir.
Correct. Correct.
And V1 is the relative velocity.
Correct. Correct. So V1 plus U1 will be equal to absolute velocity, right? Because relative velocity plus blade velocity is the absolute velocity, like the case here. Okay, so V1 plus U1 is C1, vectorial addition. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, is U1 constant from the hub to the tip, or is U1 changing?
Changing.
Changing, because
Changing,
U1 will
sir.
depend on the radius, right? Blade velocity will depend on the radius.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Or why so silent? Because you are not understanding, or is it clear to
Yes,
you?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Omega into R. Omega into R.
Yes, sir.
Correct. So at the tip, the velocity should be larger as compared to at the hub. Okay, so that's why the velocity triangles will be different at each location. Okay, so generally we draw at the tip, or at the hub, or at the mean point. Okay, mean means at the center of the tip and hub. So at the tip, it will look something like this. U1t is longer, C1 is still same, and as a result, V1t is also longer, and the alpha 1 is smaller. And at the hub, because U1h is smaller, C1 is still same, the V1h is smaller, and alpha 1h will be larger. The angle will be larger. Okay, because C1 remains same, but U1 is getting reduced. So impeller blade angle alpha 1 gets reduced from the hub to the tip. So actually it is twisted. Actually the blade should be twisted. Okay. So these blades are actually twisted, and this is the impeller eye. Okay, you can see here. I will enlarge this. This is the impeller eye. So blades are slightly twisted here. Okay, at the impeller. So this is the hub. This is the tip. Okay, this is the hub. This is the tip. Flow is coming like this in the axial direction, and then goes out in the radial direction. Okay, like this. So this is the 3D picture, and it is twisted because the angle has to change. This also will be very important while solving problem. Is this part clear? Root and tip.
Yes, sir.
So what will be the mean U1? It should be between U1 tip and U1 edge in length, right? And accordingly, the mean angle will also be in between some value. Correct? So
Yes, sir.
with this knowledge, let us go back to this diagram to calculate the. So what will be the now? Looking at this diagram, what is the wheel component? Means tangential component at the inlet. What is the tangential component of the actual velocity, absolute velocity at the inlet? Wheel component of the absolute velocity at the inlet?
Sir, 0.
0, correct. It is 0. Okay. So keep that in mind that the wheel component is 0. Okay. And at the outlet it is CW2. Okay. This has to be kept in mind. So what we will do, I will just now reduce the size. Okay. Because
Can you, sir, explain, sir, wheel component about, sir? Don't understand. Tangential component, sir.
just a second. Let me just reduce the size. Okay. So that I can keep the picture open on the right hand side. So we'll keep on referring to this picture. What did you not understand? Please quickly,
The wheel
quickly
component.
tell me. Yes.
Wheel component, sir. Sir, at the first diagram you were saying, no, sir, C1 is if perpendicular, then wheel component how 0? That I don't understand.
No, what is the wheel component? Do you understand what is the wheel component? In which direction is the wheel component?
No.
Wheel component is the tangential direction, as you can see here, CW2. Means along the direction at which rotation is occurring. The absolute velocity has a component along the direction in which the rotation is occurring. So at point 2, what is the tangential component of C2? Can you say that?
CW2.
CW2. So what will be the tangential component of C1 at this inlet section? Tangential means wheel. In the direction of rotation, what is the component of C1?
Nothing like no component is there.
No component is here because it's just perpendicular, right? So it does not
Yes.
have any projection. So
Yes,
C1,
yes.
CW1 is 0. CW1 is
Yes,
0. Right? That is what I
yes,
was saying.
yes.
In
Okay,
all
sir.
the cases, CW1 is 0, and that you have to keep in mind, okay, for the next calculation. So as I was saying, CW2 is slightly less than U2, okay. Although it should be, ideally it should be equal to U2 because there is gap between these two. The blade velocity at which the blade is moving that exact velocity cannot be imparted to the fluid flow. If there are infinite number of blades, if the thickness, if the gap between the blades is very small, say if we have 100 blades, okay, 100 vanes, then the gap is small, then the velocity also CW2 will be almost equal to U2. Okay, but if the gap becomes larger, CW2 will become lower and lower than U2, because although you are pushing at this point with velocity U2 near the blade, at the mean part, at the center part between the gap, the velocity will become less than U2. Okay. Also, what happens is, because you are pushing the flow here, means because of rotation you are pushing the flow here. Some of the flow, because you have higher pressure here and lower pressure on the other side because of pushing action. Okay, lower, because it is moving in this right direction. You have higher pressure along this on the right side of the blade and lower pressure on the left side of the blade. Some of the fluid just bypasses and goes outside this at the top, okay, from the outside section, from the tip of this impeller, and goes towards the other side. Because of this also, this is known as the slip. Because of this, some slight reduction in velocity occurs. Okay, so the main point is that CW2 ideally should have been equal to U2, but in actual case it is less than U2. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is denoted by the slip factor, and slip factor is a function of the number of vanes. There are different empirical relations. One empirical relation you can see here, sigma is equal to 1 minus 0.63 pi by n. Okay, where n is the number of vanes. Vanes are these, blades are the vanes. Okay, so if n increases, this term becomes smaller, so sigma approaches 1. Typically, a value of n is between 19 to 21, and value of sigma is between around 0.9. Okay, so if you want to increase sigma, you can increase the value of the number of blades, so that less slip is there. But in that case, what will happen, if there are more blades, your flow area will decrease, because number of the vanes also takes some area, cross sectional area, so the flow area will decrease, the flow path will decrease, channel area will decrease, and frictional losses will be more, okay, because of more vanes. So you have to go to an optimum value. If you take very less number of n, then flow area will be more, but value of sigma will be less. So CW2 will be less, which is not beneficial. You want large CW2, as we will see later. Okay, so keep this diagram in mind. And now let us calculate what is the torque. Torque is equal to the rate of change of angular momentum. Okay, so mass flow rate into change of angular momentum is CW2 into R2. So the angular momentum at the exit is CW2 into R2. Okay, R2 is the radius, minus CW1 into R1. R1 is the mean radius. Okay, you can call it R1m, and CW1 is the tangential component or wheel component of velocity at the mean radius. What is CW1? What is the value of CW1?
0.
0. Okay, so this term is equal to 0. So we are left with m dot CW2 R2. Okay. So I have mentioned that typically flow entry is axial in the absence of inlet guide vanes. So we will see later that it need not be always 0. If there are inlet guide vanes, CW1 can be non-zero. Okay, but in this case, typical cases, it is 0 when there are no inlet guide vanes. So per unit mass, okay, the torque can be written as, so you divide by mass flow rate. The torque is CW2 into R2. Okay, or the work done, which is equal to torque into angular velocity, omega. Okay, so CW to R2 into omega. Now R2 into omega, what is R2 into omega? It is equal to U2, right? U2 velocity here is radius into velocity. So R ultimately, and if you write CW2 as sigma into U2, as we have written here, sigma into U2, we get the work done equal to sigma into U2 square. Okay, if you multiply this by the mass flow rate, you get the power input that is given on the air in the impeller section. Is it clear to everyone? The work done on the air in the impeller, sigma U2 square.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so because of frictional losses and other losses, means disk friction and windage and viscous losses, you need although the power input to the fluid is sigma U2 square, you need more power input from your side. Okay, the theoretical power input that is required is slightly larger because of the frictional losses. So you need to provide more power or more work, so that ultimately you get this amount of change in velocity CW2. Okay, So for that to occur, you need more power. So instead of sigma U2 square, the actual work input is denoted as some factor psi into sigma U2 square, where psi is known as the power input factor and is greater than 1, slightly greater than 1. Typically, it is between 1.035 to 1.04, depends on the frictional losses in the impeller. If the losses are more, these values, power input factor will be more. If losses are less, this will tend to go towards 1. If it is the ideal case, no losses, this power input factor will be equal to 1. Okay. So this denotes the actual work input, psi sigma U2 square. Okay. Actual work input to the year, the work done on the year per unit mass flow rate. Okay. Where the psi takes into account the frictional losses in the impeller, only in the impeller, not in the diffuser. We are just considering the impeller. Okay. So now if we consider the change in the enthalpy, okay, so work input to the air in the impeller should be equal to the change in the stagnation enthalpy, okay, from first law. If you write the first law, so H02 plus H01 plus Q means heat input is equal to H02 plus W. Okay, so there is no heat input in the impeller. So work input is equal to T02 means H02 minus H01 or Cp T02 minus T01, where T02 is the stagnation temperature at the outlet and T01 is the stagnation temperature at the mean radius inlet. Okay, so this Cp T02 minus T01 is equal to the work input, which we have already calculated as psi sigma U2 square. Okay, now because there is no work input in the diffuser, the overall work input, overall change in enthalpy, in case there are no losses in the diffuser, or even if there are frictional losses, it does not change the stagnation temperature, right? So stagnation temperature at the diffuser exit is also T03, which is equal to T02. Okay, so the overall change in enthalpy, stagnation enthalpy across the entire centrifugal compressor is given by Cp T03 minus T01, which is equal to the change in stagnation enthalpy across the impeller, which is Cp T02 minus T01, because there is no change in stagnation enthalpy across the diffuser. Okay, which is equal to sigma psi U2 square, where T01 I have written as already written, we have explained stagnation temperature at the inlet of the compressor, at the mean radius. T02, it does not matter, it is at any radius. Okay, T01 is the stagnation temperature if you consider the inlet condition. Okay, static temperature will change, but stagnation temperature, it does not matter. Anywhere at the inlet, stagnation temperature is T01. T01 is the stagnation temperature at the outlet of the impeller, and this has increased. This will increase because you are providing some work input. Okay, as a result, stagnation temperature will increase because stagnation enthalpy increases, and this difference is given by the work input. Okay, and T03 is the stagnation temperature at the exit of the diffuser, means at this section. Okay, so T01 is here, T02 is here, and T03 is here. Okay, so there is no difference between T02 and T03 because stagnation temperature remains same, stagnation enthalpy remains same, as there is no work output or heat input. Okay, although there are frictional losses, it does not change the stagnation temperature, it only changes the stagnation pressure. So this is our relation of increase in stagnation temperature across the compressor. Cp T03 minus T01 is equal to sigma psi sigma U2 square. Okay, any questions up to this point?
No, sir.
Go through these notes, otherwise it is there also in the book. Then T03 minus T01 is sigma psi sigma U2 square by Cp. Okay, now for the overall compressor, based on the overall friction, we already know we can define an isentropic efficiency eta C. Okay, it is the overall losses in the overall frictional losses in the compressor. Okay, so if the actual change in temperature is from T01 to T03, the ideal change in temperature can be denoted as T01 to T03s. Okay, this is the ideal change in temperature. Actual change we have already calculated, T03 minus T01. This is the actual change. Okay, but to calculate the pressure, we have to take into account the overall frictional losses in the compressor, and that is given by the isentropic efficiency eta C, which is very familiar relation to us. Eta C is T03s minus T01 by T03 minus T01. Okay, So this very familiar relation gives us the relation between T03s, the isentropic temperature at the exit of the enter compressor after the diffuser, and the actual stagnation temperature at the exit of the diffuser. Okay. So using this relation now, we can write T03s minus T01 as eta C T03 minus T01. Okay. Now taking this to one side, eta C T03 minus T01 to one side, you have this T03s minus T01 on the other side. If you take T01 common, you have T03s by T01 minus 1. Okay. Why we have written in this form T03s by T01?
To define pressure, to find pressure.
Pressure ratio, correct. To find exit pressure. Because ultimately we want to find the pressure ratio. Because the ultimate aim of what is the aim of this centrifugal compressor? To increase the pressure. Right? To increase, so we want to see how much is the pressure ratio. So we can now write this as this T03s by T01 as P03 by P01. From this diagram you can see P03 by P01 to the power gamma of air, gamma minus 1 by gamma, where gamma is the gamma of air. Because we are dealing with air in the compressor, I am not writing it as gamma A. You can assume that it will be gamma A. Okay, P03 by P01 to the power gamma minus 1 by gamma minus 1. T01 we have taken to the other side. So we are left with eta C by T01, T03 minus T01. And what is T03 minus T01? It is psi sigma U2 square by Cp. Okay, so you replace all the terms and rearrange the terms, you will get the pressure ratio P03 by P01 as this term goes to the right hand side 1 plus eta C psi sigma U2 square divided by Cp, Cp was there, and T01 comes from here, whole to the power, this term goes to the other side, gamma by gamma minus 1. So this is the pressure ratio in terms of known parameters. Okay, so what are the parameters which are known to us? The isentropic efficiency of the compressor, the psi, which is the power input factor, which depends on the frictional losses only in the impeller, sigma, which is the slip factor, okay, which we have already discussed. U2 is the tangential component of blade, like the blade velocity at the exit, which is equal to R2 into omega. Cp and gamma are the air properties, and T01 is the inlet condition, which is known to us. Okay. So let us for a moment, let us just discuss this point. Okay. So it looks like the increase in sigma. So what we want the pressure ratio to be as high as. So our aim is to always increase the pressure ratio, and to do that, what do we need? We want the isentropic efficiency as high as possible. Okay, because more isentropic efficiency means less losses. So we want the losses to be less, and if the losses are less, we can get more pressure ratio. This is intuitive. We always know that if the losses are less, we will have higher pressure ratio. Correct? It is clear to you, right? But also it looks like that if this psi is large, means power input factor is large, pressure ratio will be large. Okay, so it means that this, but actually this is not the case. Okay, although it looks like this should be the case, actually this psi and eta C are not independent. Okay, so what happens is that psi also depends on friction, but friction only in the impeller section, whereas eta C depends on the friction both in the impeller and the diffuser. Okay, so if more friction is there, I have said that psi will be larger. More friction is there, this power input factor will be larger. Okay. On the other hand, more friction is there, eta C will be less. So even if you get larger, this eta C will become so less that overall effect will be deteriorating the pressure losses. Okay. So actually, this is not beneficial. Increasing power input factor is not beneficial. You want it to be as less as possible. If this is less, although it seems that this pressure ratio will be less, but if this is less, eta C will be automatically higher because it already has this factor inside. Okay, it will be automatically higher. So overall, the pressure ratio will be higher. Okay, so this is one important parameter. It looks like increase in psi is good. However, it is not actually so, as it leads to decreasing eta C. Okay, and this I have explained. Psi and eta C are related. Low psi means high eta C. However, eta C also depends on the frictional losses in the diffuser, whereas psi only depends on the frictional losses in the impeller. Okay, so you can say that eta C takes into account both the losses, while this only takes into account the impeller losses. But it has to be there because it comes as part of the equation. It has to be separately there from eta C. Now the other option is to increase sigma. Okay, power slip factor, not power input, slip factor. How to increase the value of sigma? To increase the number of vanes. Okay, so that slip is less. But I have already told, if we keep on increasing the number of veins, the metal has certain cross-sectional area, right? This thickness. So if more veins are there, say 100 veins are there, so the overall area for the flow will get reduced because much of the area is taken up by the thickness of the veins itself. So this is not good. Means what will happen if the overall area gets reduced? What will happen? The flow velocity will increase for the same mass flow rate because channel area is reduced, flow velocity will increase, and as a result, frictional losses will be more, and even more less efficiency will get and less pressure ratio. So you cannot just keep on increasing sigma. On the other hand, if you have very less number of blades, that also is detrimental because you will get very low sigma, and this is given by this relation that we have defined here. Okay, slip factor will be very low. So optimum value of sigma is taken as between 19 to means around 0.9, which correspond to 19 to 21 veins, and there are different empirical relations. Okay, so sigma limits the work capacity even under. So it is very important to note here that sigma is not related to any frictional losses. Okay. Yes, just hold for a moment. Yes, बताइए. Okay. Just hold for a moment. कितना साइन? बहुत सारे साइन है क्योंकि मेरा क्लास चल रहा है, तो 10 मिनट बाद आइए. नहीं तो मैं ऑफिस में जाऊंगा, मैं साइन कर दूंगा. ओके, सॉरी फॉर द इंटरप्शन. सो it is very important to note here at this point that sigma is not related anywhere. We have not defined sigma in terms of any frictional losses. Even if the flow is entirely isentropic, no losses occur, no friction. It is smoothly goes from here to here. Okay, no frictional losses, no viscous losses. Still this sigma will be there because it does not depend on frictional losses. It is something related to something else. Okay, it happens because you are not able to push the air with the same velocity as U2 because some air actually goes to the other side. Okay, so average velocity of the air decreases in this direction and it is less than U2. It does not relate to any frictional losses. So even if isentropic conditions are there, your sigma will be lower than 1. Okay, and it only depends on the number of veins. So if number of veins is high, it leads to less area at the impeller eye, resulting in higher inlet velocity and higher friction. I have already defined that. So typical value needs to be 0.9. Okay, so this is the other factor. Then third factor which denotes how much pressure we can get is U2. Okay, all the other factors are beyond our hand. Cp, gamma and T0 are already given factors. So if we can increase U2, we can get more pressure ratio. Now how to increase U2? What is the process for increasing U2? Answers, quick answers.
Can increase the speed of the blade.
Increasing the radius.
Either the radius or the angular velocity or both. Okay. In any case, if you increase either the angular velocity or the radius, the centrifugal stress will increase. Okay. If the radius increases, centrifugal stress will increase. Omega increases, centrifugal stress will increase. So if U2 increases, centrifugal stress will increase. So the maximum limit depends on the material. So if it is aluminum material, it has a certain limit. If you use titanium compressor impeller, titanium blades, then it will be higher limit. Okay. So typically limits are, so you want lightweight material. That's why I'm telling aluminum, titanium, not tungsten or steel like this. Okay. You want lightweight materials. So typically you can achieve just around the sonic velocity or slightly larger. So around 400-450 meters per second can be achieved. And that is the maximum limit of U2, and that governs what is the pressure ratio. So for aluminum impellers, you can go up to 4:1 as given by say literature, and for titanium even you can go up to 8:1 pressure ratio, which is very high. In single stage 8:1, whereas for axial compressors you can only go up to 1.5:1. Okay, so 8:1 is very high, and literature says that it is up to 8:1. So you have to verify with literature. And the other factor is T01, which we don't have any control. So these are the factors which govern the pressure ratio at the exit. Okay, and this is how we need to calculate the pressure ratio based on the velocity diagram. And I will give you 2 example problems to solve in the next class. It has homework problems where you can see how these are related. All these we have derived are related. How to calculate C2 and angles, things like that. and I will just introduce you to the problems, but this will be homework means you don't have to give it to me. It's just problem sets are there for your practice. Okay, I will upload it today itself so that you can start practicing them. So any questions regarding this part? We will go through some small materials, but this is the main part of how the pressure ratio. So what we have done is we have related the requirement. Our requirement is what is the pressure ratio from the compressor. So we have related this pressure ratio and what is the enthalpy change or temperature change in the compressor, related it to geometrical parameters and other parameters like what is the velocity, things like that. Okay, so to the design aspects, we have related the thermodynamics to the design aspects of the impeller. That was the main idea behind this derivation. Any questions on this? If there is no question,
Sir, what is the reason behind the slip?
the slip actually I have already explained. I will explain again. You can see this diagram. I will just keep this enlarged picture. You can see this diagram, right? So can you see the diagram of the schematic of the impeller?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so these are the blades, okay, vanes or blades. You can see these double lines, right? And these are moving in the right hand direction. Is it clear to you? They are moving in the right hand direction because of rotation.
Yes, sir.
So what will be the pressure just adjacent, because the vanes are moving the air, right? And there is a certain gap. It is not that they are very close. So what will be the pressure just adjacent to the blade on the right hand side? It will be high, right? Because it is pushing. You have a plate which is pushing the air. Plate which is pushing the air. So here the pressure is high, right? Is it clear to you?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Now the pressure keeps on decreasing, and on the other side, if you consider this side of the blade, or for the previous blade, this side, the blade is moving on this other side. Just behind the blade, what will be the pressure? It will be slightly lower, right? Because it is moving forward. There is no pushing action on the other side. So the pressure is on the other side. On the back side of the blade is slightly lower. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So now because of this pressure difference, some of the air actually flows around this blade to the other side. Okay, around the impeller. I will show you this. So around from this side, if I zoom it, from this side, it will go to the other side through the vaneless space. Okay, this causes, so because the sum of the flow is going there, the average velocity here of the flow is slightly less than the velocity of the blade because some flow is leaking out. Okay, so this is why it is called slip, and the slip is happening. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Understood,
okay.
Sir.
Good. So time is up today. Let me just, then we'll continue this discussion in the next class. I would have liked to go through some more details, but we'll continue this discussion in the next class. Okay. And let me see whether I can download the attendance. I hope it is downloaded already because it does not give any notification. So it is downloaded. Okay. So I will not take my attendance because I will just give the attendance based on this data, download data, to save time. So we are going quite smoothly. So as I was telling in the previous class that I want to reduce the number of extra classes because of heavy load for you guys. So in the last week also, means this week also, we did not take the Monday extra class. Last week also I will not take extra class, but I will need one extra class. So either next Monday or some other day, 1 2-hour class will be needed, so that in the last week we have very less material, so that there is no pressure on you. Last week we can very easily complete. Okay, only within 1.5 hours in the last week we will complete. One class is there, 2-hour class, but we will complete easily. So most probably next Monday I will take the extra class, and then the other normal classes are there. Okay, so Wednesday and Thursday, and try to finish it by then, and very small amount of material may be left for the last week. Is it okay for everyone? Or if you don't want it on Monday because Monday is holiday, I can take it on another day, office day also. because we are going very in a descriptive manner, so slightly slowly, so it is taking more time. Otherwise, if I hurry through, you will not understand too much. So I am asking a lot of questions so that you understand this part. And we will finish all the parts without compromising on the quality. That is my aim. Okay, so whatever we complete every year, same thing we will complete this year also. So that's why. So is it okay Monday for everyone? Monday evening, or do you have any other suggestion? 2 hour I need extra, not any other extra classes, not last week or anything. Okay. So I see no objection. I am assuming that it is okay for all of you. Okay.
Sir, Monday instead of evening, we can take in the afternoon or morning since it's a holiday.
That can be done. It is holiday. That can be done. At what time? Can after lunch? Is it okay? Just after lunch? Or after breakfast also is okay for me. After breakfast may be better.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can it be taken around 11? 11?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
11 to 1. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that will be the perfect time. That will be the perfect time. 11 to 1. Monday 11 to 1. Wednesday 11 to 1. Thursday 1 hour. And slide material will be left. Some slides and other things I want to show so that you get some broader idea also. That will be in the last Wednesday class. Okay. So that should be sufficient, and some problems I will keep on giving to you. So thank you. Okay. We will meet on Monday 11. I will just remind you about that. Okay. About that class. So go through. Right now you don't have. I have not suggested any problems. So on Monday I will suggest problems from the compressor part. Okay. Go through the previous. Turbojet part is the main part for the exam. Not turbojet, sorry. Jet engines is the main part for the exam. So go through all the jet engine part. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.